Curious about outspoken online characters facing real challenges? Keep watching as these delusional wokies get destroyed by Ben Shapiro.
You have claimed that you oppose medical transitioning for these children, namely and specifically to what normally happens is puberty blockers, which you have called you called it child abuse. Is that correct?
It is. That's correct.
You consider it okay. You consider it child abuse. You consider it child abuse because you believe that a child is not capable of consenting to what you consider are irreversible procedures. Is that correct?
A damaging, irreversible procedure.
Damaging. Okay. Ben, are your children circumcised? Did you circumcise your children?
Yes, I have two sons and they're both circumcised.
Why would you do that? Isn't that kind of hypocritical?
Nope, I'm circumcised. My works just fine.
Why? Why is violating the bodily autonomy of an infant acceptable to you? And I can say, I'm a owner, and I can tell you, there's sensitivity right there, Ben, that is removed when you do a circumcision. Why is that okay to
well,
you?
I don't mean to get personal, but I'm sure it doesn't seem like you could possibly have a basis for comparison. You can't be both circumcised and uncircumcised. You're going to have to choose. As far as the efficacy of a once it's circumcised, if you wish to get into the biology, I'm perfectly happy to just point at my 4 children. I've been fruitful and I've multiplied. It's all working out just great. As for the notion that it is a grave violation of bodily autonomy, I can tell you there are millions of men across time who've been circumcised. This is not a quote-unquote damaging procedure in the same way that, taking a boy and shooting him full of estrogen so you can later cut off his and is. That's an absurd comparison on every level.
Ben Shapiro was questioned by a college student on why he opposes medical transitioning for children, but supports circumcision. In his rebuttal, Shapiro argued that circumcision is not comparable to hormone treatments or surgeries, as it is a common procedure that does not have the same long-term damaging effects.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I just had a question about a comment you made at the beginning about transitioning from male to female or otherwise.
Yes.
You've talked a lot tonight about how important it is to let people believe what they want to believe and how the government and us have no say telling people what they should think or what they should be able to say. I just wanted to ask, what's the harm, if somebody's going to be a happier person because they say that they're a man or a woman, what's the harm in just letting them do it?
I'm not in favor of government banning people who are adults. Children I'm in favor of banning because now you're talking about somebody who's not capable of consent. Right? All of our laws are based on the ability of people to consent. If you're a child, you can't consent. So I'm very much in favor of banning gender transition for kids. I think that it's frankly evil. I think you're making decisions for children who are not capable of making decisions for themselves that are permanent and have long-lasting, significant, and severe impact. As far as adults, if you're 25 and you want to get a sex change surgery and you feel like it's going to make you feel better, you have the right to do it. You do. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I mean, the research on this stuff tends to be somewhat conflicting, but if it works for you, it works, right? It's a free country. Now, that's really not the question that's being asked in our society today, because I don't think there are that many people who are like, we want to ban gender surgery for a 30-year-old. I'm not seeing the campaign for that. What I am seeing is a campaign on the left that says that my child is going to be removed from my home 10 years from now if I don't agree with the left's view of how I should treat my child's gender confusion at age 4. I see the left suggesting that they want to fine me if I refuse to say that a man is a woman as a general proposition. Right? If I say that men and women are separate, then the left says this is discrimination. Or the left is going to suggest that it has no impact on my business if I employ a woman at Hooters and she shows up the next day as a man. Right? That does have an impact on my business, right? But the left would suggest, well, you should sort of deal with it. Well, it turns out that gender does mean something, and it does have an actual meaning to people outside of you. I'm not going to go along with the general societal willingness to rewrite basic facets of human nature and human biology, and frankly, mammalian biology, in order to suggest that a delusion is true. Now, if the best thing for the person is for the person they can't change what they're thinking, there's no way for them to get out of it, they want to change their body so they feel that it is more in line with what they're thinking, more power to them, that's their problem. And as I've said before, by the way, I've said this 1,000 times and everybody on the left automatically ignores it, of course. I've said that if I were in a room with a transgender person having dinner with that person, I wouldn't go out of my way to call them by their biological sex. Because it's rude, right? I wouldn't do that if I were sitting right across from them. But if you're asking me in a public forum whether a man is a man and a woman is a woman, or asking me to call a man a woman in a public forum, the answer is no.
Ben Shapiro argued that while adults should be free to transition if they believe it will make them happier, he opposes allowing children to make such decisions as they are not capable of informed consent. He emphasized that the long-term impact on children makes gender transition for minors problematic.
In one of your more infamous debates, you said, "I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are."
Yes.
My argument is not that terms like biological female or biological male are necessarily offensive. My argument is that you are saying that referring to a trans woman as a woman or a trans man as a man or et cetera, is like inherently offensive or threatens biology. And I'm curious why it's so threatened when there's clear precedent for changing the language.
Again, the term mother does not include father. Every category has to have boundaries. The boundary of female starts at male. And when you start including male in the category of female, you are threatening biological definitions as well as basic truth.
Well, you could say the category of mother starts at conception, or a biological relation to an offspring. But as we know,
but again, the idea that you are, the idea of motherhood being the act of mothering, right? And that is a female. A female does the act of mothering. You can say that a female who does the act of mothering is a mother, but you also have a special category called biological motherhood. I'm not going to say that an adoptive mom and a biological mom have precisely the same definition. They don't. They're underneath a subset of category called motherhood. That motherhood sometimes involves birth, sometimes it does not, but it certainly involves being a female.
What do you think about the distinction between cis women and trans women?
Explain.
Well, you're saying that a more inclusive usage of the word mother isn't particularly offensive because we also have biological mother.
Yes.
We've offered the term cis woman, and even biological woman or assigned female at birth. We've offered a variety of terms that properly categorize people.
Again, you cannot extend the term woman to apply to a biological male. Every category has an endpoint. If there are only two categories, male and female, and you say that female now is in this category, there are no definitions. There are no definitions. I mean, to paraphrase my friend Matt Walsh, I'm going to need you to explain what a woman is without reference to the word woman. We can go on all day like this, but...
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily circular to say that a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood.
Yes, it is.
And that...
It is definitionally circular.
Well...
That's like saying a hand is something that fundamentally shows handhood.
Well, what I have
a tree is something that demonstrates the qualities of treehood. What new actual definitional content have you added to the word?
In a debate with a pro-trans student, Ben Shapiro argued that redefining biological categories, like male and female, poses a threat to objective truth. He responded to the student's point about the evolving language around gender by stating that categories need boundaries to remain meaningful.
Define womanhood for you, which is a set of characteristics associated with females, and a woman as someone who exhibits said womanhood.
Okay, well, you have just used the word female and woman to define each other. So you say a woman is a female, but not a biological female. A female is a woman and a woman is a female, but at no point have you added any new content.
No, I said a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood, and womanhood is a set of characteristics.
Yes, and that doesn't mean anything.
Why does, how does it not
the
mean
reason
anything?
It doesn't mean, okay, Again, a dog is a thing that exhibits the characteristics of doghood. It's a set of characteristics characterized by being a dog. I've added no content to that. If you have no idea what a dog is, you still have no idea what a dog is.
There are plenty of labels that refer to concepts. This is not a new thing.
It's not a label referring to a concept. It's a label that's referring to the same word as the concept. You can't do that. That's fundamentally circular.
I'm not referring to the same word. I'm saying that womanhood...
You have not defined even womanhood. You said a set of characteristics that applies to females, and then you're applying it to males. So clearly this is nonsensical. I'm sorry that it doesn't. I'm sorry that your attempts to worm a definition into nonsense are not succeeding. But like, I can't make that fit into logic because it doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry. I talk about preborn a lot on this show. I believe in their mission. I know you do too. Who wouldn't want to help moms and their kids in crisis? Preborn is the largest provider of free ultrasounds in the United States. They connect with women who are considering abortion, offer them a free ultrasound so they can hear their child's heartbeat. This divine connection has proven to double the probability that a mom will choose to carry her child to term. Every day, Preborn's network of clinics saves 200 babies' lives. But it doesn't stop there. They offer moms maternity clothes, doctor visits, and the support they need to raise a child after giving birth. It's an incredible organization I am proud to stand behind. You can support
preborn right now with a gift of just $28. This will cover the cost of one free ultrasound and could save the life of an unborn child. It's the most important thing you're going to do today. To donate, just dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or donate securely at preborn.com/Ben. Again, that's preborn.com/Ben. Go check them out right now. Preborn.com/Ben. Start saving a life. Just takes $28. Preborn.com/Ben.
Hey, Ben. This week in Israel, they reported that like 76% of Israelis thought that Netanyahu should step down. And I'm curious, like, because Israel doesn't have a figurehead like Zelensky to rally around, is Netanyahu doing more harm than good? Also, I'm curious if you would have on Dean Phillips for a Sunday special.
So I'm not really aware of Dean Phillips other than he's running against Biden, right? That's the guy. I didn't hear of him until he ran against Biden. So sure, I guess, why not? I mean, sure, okay. But in any case, as far as Netanyahu, the reason that Israelis are very anti-Netanyahu is that Israelis actually are reacting the way that I would hope that Americans reacted to bad presidents, which is when a president fails, they get very angry at it. So this is the single greatest security failure in Israeli history. And so even a lot of people who voted for Netanyahu in Israel are now very anti-Netanyahu. Now, the way that it works in Israel is because they have a coalition government, they actually have to have a vote of no confidence, and then a majority has to vote Netanyahu out. That's not going to happen right now. But whenever people on the left or in the media start talking about the right-wing Netanyahu government, that's ridiculous and ignorant, considering that right now they have a unity government that includes Benny Gantz, who's on the center left. Right? The fact is that Israel has come together in incredible ways in the after. It reminds me of 9/11 in the United States. Like, people came together for a hot second here.
Shapiro maintained that if woman is extended to include biological males, it undermines the clarity of these categories. He further argued that defining terms like woman without referring to biology creates circular logic, which ultimately makes the definition meaningless.
I think it's going to last a lot longer there, because the truth is that as devastating as 9/11 was for the United States, Israel's a much, much smaller country. And so in terms of sort of the feeling of insecurity, they're also surrounded on every border by people who don't like them very much. And so I think that the future of the state of Israel is going to be a lot more unified. But yeah, I mean, Netanyahu is going to take a serious political hit at some point in the future.
What about, like, internationally?
I mean, internationally, I think people are looking for an excuse to be putting pressure on Israel, because the easiest solution is always weapons down, everybody calm down, a few Jews got killed, but whatever, we don't want this thing to escalate. The reality is what is in the best interest of pretty much everybody, except for the Iranians, is for Hamas to be destroyed completely and utterly. That's in the best interest of the Europeans, it's in the... It's in everybody's best interest, including, by the way, Sunni governments.
Hi there. So Wisconsin was in like a $7 billion budget, and yet a lot of the smaller two-year trade schools in the UW system and like four-year engineering schools are losing money. They're firing people. They're like leaving, getting less students. And this is because the Republican legislature, didn't increase funding. They decreased it in hopes to get rid of the DEI department. I go here. DEI department's like not that big of a deal. Like, if you want to go, you can. If you don't want to go, you can kind of just avoid it. Is it really worth like lowering educational opportunities for people, raising tuitions, and decreasing enrollment in like very important trade schools for the purpose of like ending DEI at a school where the value is still going to be here?
So you're asking the wrong guy. I think that every major university in the United States should cut its entire liberal arts department and tell people to get a life. Meaning that
there's smaller universities though that
I understand. My feeling about college is very simple. If you are able to get somebody to give you a loan to go to the school because they feel that your degree is then going to allow you a higher earning level, then that seems to me a good use of dollars. Subsidizing people's education where a bank would not very often is a giant waste of money. And so the amount of money that's wasted in state schooling systems so that people can get a degree in lesbian dance theory or whatever is silly. And furthermore, if you're majoring in engineering, so to give you an example, I was able to get private loans to go to Harvard Law School. Why? Because they knew when I got out of the other end of Harvard Law School, I was going to earn a bunch of money because I went to Harvard Law School. Okay, the same thing isn't necessarily true if you're majoring in poli-sci at a state school, right? You're still, dude, I majored in poli-sci too. There we go, bro. So here's the thing. You're going to finish up in poli-sci, and then you're going to go to a real school doing real things.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're probably going to go to law school, or you're going to go work in business, or you're going to get an apprenticeship somewhere. And here's the reality. The entire college system is a credentialing scam. Unless you are in the hard sciences, the entire college system should be done away with, and people should go directly into the workforce where they learn how to do a job.
Yeah. So if you want me to like go back, I can. I feel like you didn't fully answer my question because I'm more saying I agree with you that like trade schools are really important for a community, but I'm saying that the smaller ones rely on like the subsidies from the government to stay afloat, and they're currently not getting it because of like this like moral war between like Robin Vos and the Republicans and the Tony Evers about like, you know, DEI here. I feel like there's a ton of people who don't really care and they want to go to a smaller school in their hometown and learn how to do a trade.
I hear you,
and
I'm just saying I'm more extreme than the Republican legislature, and I would slash and burn my way through the college budgets.
Fair enough. All right. All right. Hey, you have a good one.
Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.
Shapiro believes that biological differences between males and females are foundational and shouldn't be altered based on subjective identity preferences.
Hi. So in 2016, you tweeted out a list of 20 people that you called alt-right or alt-right friendly. It included Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan, Ann Coulter, and even Donald Trump. Recently, you gave a speech at Stanford about Nick Fuentes, who you called an alt-right lead influencer. My question is this. It seems like conservatives like you, like Charlie Kirk, like Dan Crenshaw, feel threatened by America First conservatives and America First ideas. Is this why you're smearing them as alt-right, racist, homophobic, and all these other things instead of actually addressing their ideas and debating them?
So first of all, I'm happy to address any ideas. I'm not happy to debate somebody who has joked about murdering me. That's Fuentes. As far as some of the other people who are mentioned, obviously, when I say alt-right or alt-right adjacent, you'd have to date the tweet. So back in 2016, the fact of the matter is that people like Ron Paul, who has a long history of extremism, if you go back and you read the Ron Paul letters, there's a fair bit of anti-Semitism and racism in them. If you look at Donald Trump, who I said overtly in 2016, flirted with the alt-right because he did in April and May of 2016. That was a dated tweet. If you're going to date the tweet to 2016, you actually have to date the tweet to 2016, not to yesterday, because things change. Donald Trump, thank God, has forcibly expelled many of the people who are alt-right adjacent, like Steve Bannon, from his administration, which is a very, very good thing. As far as the idea that, you know, I'm somehow refusing to debate lower levels of immigration, that is obviously untrue. You can go watch an hour-long interview that I did with the aforementioned Ann Coulter back before 2016 about a book she did on immigration. It's all about lowering levels of immigration. If we're talking about tariffs, happy to have that conversation. I had it with Tucker Carlson. If you're talking about a more isolationist foreign policy, I've had that conversation with many, many people. I said this in my speech at Stanford, which people are willfully ignoring. I'm not arguing that people who hold those views are quote-unquote alt-right. The alt-right is a very specific viewpoint that sees.
Ben Shapiro was confronted by alt-right supporters during a Q&A, accusing him of smearing America First conservatives. One individual questioned Shapiro's refusal to debate people like Nick Fuentes, to which Shapiro replied that he won't engage with someone who has joked about murdering him.
That suggests that white nationalism is the answer to that problem, that suggests that the problem with immigration is not a problem of culture or assimilation. The problem in America is a problem of what race the people are who are coming into the country. That is not a point of view that is even within the realm of sort of the paleocon viewpoint. That is a point of view that is actively alt-right. So the alt-right does have a definition, and I tried to be as specific about that definition as possible at Stanford University. If you want to ask a follow-up, that's fine.
Well, first of all, Nick Fuentes is not a white nationalist. He's an America First conservative. He literally has a show every night called America First. You've called Pat Buchanan an anti-Semite and racist for 15 years when Pat Buchanan is a legend of conservatism. You need to stop smearing people who want to reduce immigration and criticize Israel as anti-Semitic and racist and just accept that they disagree with you and they simply want to put America first.
Oh no, there are plenty of people who disagree with me and who are critical of Israel and are not anti-Semitic. There are plenty of people who disagree with me on all the aforementioned issues. I've mentioned some of their names, and that is perfectly fine. If you want to discuss Nick Fuentes specifically, I suggest, again, you go back and you look at his videos about why 6 million Jews, or what was it, 1 million Jews could not have been burned in the ovens at Auschwitz or at Treblinka. I suggest that you go back and you look at videos of him, actual videos of him doing things like playing Grand Theft Auto, running over an Orthodox Jew, cackling maniacally, and then talking about how he had just killed Ben Shapiro. I refer you to a video last week in which Nick Fuentes pulls out a switchblade and starts randomly jabbing it in the air while talking about me. No, I don't think he's a mainstream conservative. conservative. And I think that it is a sin for people to conflate mainstream conservatism with that kind of garbage. Thanks. Now, I gave you a couple questions. There are other people in the line.
So,
well, wait, let me guess your political affiliation.
it might surprise you. So, Ben, first, I'd like to thank you for being here and having an open dialogue with everybody tonight. It's greatly appreciated. Free speech is under attack in this country. So, recently, when you spoke at Stanford, you smeared America First patriots like myself with all the same leftist insults Antifa uses, the same ones they're using outside to smear us walking in here today. So my question for you, Ben, is will you debate a true conservative like Nicholas J. Fuentes, or are you too scared to defend your anti-America First positions?
So, number one, if you didn't notice, I answered this question like 4 questions ago. Number 2, I will repeat the answer again. I see no purpose in debating somebody who has joked about my death. That is not something that I make a habit of. If you want me to debate somebody about immigration policy who is a limited immigration person, or have a discussion with that person, I'm happy to do so. By the way, I see a very strong argument in favor of limiting immigration, both legal and certainly illegal, to the United States. Okay, if you want me to talk about tariff policy and have a discussion with somebody about that, I'm happy to do that. If you want me to have a discussion about Israel or Israeli policy, I'm happy to do that. What I am not happy to do is have a debate with somebody who has joked about my death, called people who work for me Shabbos Goy race traders, praised the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. That I am not going to do. And by the way, you can get, I'm not going to stop anybody from asking questions, but if you keep asking the same question, you're going to keep getting the same answers.
He clarified that the alt-right holds racist and white nationalist views, distinguishing them from mainstream conservative viewpoints. Shapiro emphasized that while he's open to debates on immigration, tariffs, and other policies, he draws the line at those who promote hate speech and violence.
Hi, Ben. I'm a big fan of yours, and at the meet and greet, I told you I've watched all your shows and
well,
watched
thank
all
you.
your
I appreciate
debates.
it.
So this question, I know no one's asked you yet, because it's a relatively new phenomenon. But to preface before we get onto the question, you've mentioned before, to which I agree to, that the women back in the days, more with like Christian values and Judeo-Christian values, that they've realized men act a certain way. Therefore, we should take preemptive measures so that men don't act that way because we know how they act. Whereas the new third-wave feminist movement sees men and says, well, if men act that way, therefore women can act that way as well. So what this is leading to is the new phenomenon is the slut walk movement. I don't know if you've known about that.
Yeah.
With Amber Rose. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, what do you think are the ramifications of women saying, well, if men can go out and dress however they want and women can do the exact same thing, do you think that leads to a loosening of the fabric of society, where shame is a necessary determinant in society?
Yeah,
and that it leads to like sexual assault and an increase in things?
Okay, so I think that, first of all, if somebody commits a sexual assault, the only person to blame is the person who commits the sexual assault, right? That right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Right? Victims are not to blame for their own sexual assault. I also think that if you put yourself in a risky situation, then you've put yourself in a risky situation, right? We do this every day, right? Every day we make decisions about what sort of situations to put ourselves in. If I walk through a high-crime neighborhood waving $100 bills above my head and then I am robbed, then it is the fault of the person who robs me. It is not my fault. But I also made a bad decision to do that.
Yes.
Okay, so two things can be true at once. And it is not blaming the victim to say that it's a bad decision to walk through a high-crime neighborhood at night waving your wallet over your head.
Yeah.
Right? It is also not a good idea to go to parties where drinking and drugs.
During a Q&A, a fan asked Ben Shapiro about the ramifications of the slut walk movement and the idea that women can behave like men in terms of promiscuity. Shapiro responded by stating that while sexual assault is always the fault of the perpetrator, individuals should also be mindful of avoiding risky situations.
Are commonplace with a bunch of guys who are pigs.
Yes.
Right? That's just not a good idea. Now, does that relieve responsibility from the guys? 100% not. If a guy rapes you or sexually assaults you, he should be castrated or killed.
Yeah.
I'm very strict on this.
Absolutely.
But,
and one more question.
One of the things that I hate so much about this conversation is that people assume two things can't be true at once. That if I think that rape is bad, and I also think that you shouldn't make decisions that heighten your own risk factor, that I'm somehow blaming the person who heightened the risk factor for the bad thing that happened to them. No, two things can always be true at once, and normally they are.
Yeah, I just think the slut walk's increasing the sexual liberation.
You know,
of society.
as far as slut walk, again, I don't know why anybody would be prideful about their own promiscuity, man or woman.
Yeah.
It's confusing to me. As somebody who was a virgin until marriage, and very proudly so, and believe that has made my relationship with my wife better and stronger and holier, I am perfectly consistent on this. I hold women to a particular standard, I hold men to a particular standard. That standard is being classy.
Yeah.
I know that word has kind of lost some of its meaning these days, but being classy.
And one thing, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, he says that the Politicon debate that you were with, he says that it wasn't a real debate because debating you was like debating with a robot. So, and he preferred Tucker Carlson's debate. How do you respond to Cenk?
I mean, he preferred Tucker Carlson's debate because he and Tucker agree on more things. I mean, really, that's not a rip on Tucker. He and Tucker agree on all this stuff about corporations need to be restricted, and Tucker's more of an economic populist, and cut out campaign spending, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, if he doesn't like debating me, that's his prerogative. He agreed to it. I mean, and as far as debating a robot, like, I'm sorry, I'm good at my job.
He explained that two things can be true at once. People can condemn sexual assault while also encouraging personal responsibility. Shapiro expressed confusion over the celebration of promiscuity and advocated for maintaining a standard of classiness for both men and women. Click now to see more wokey videos.